I got you. Wait a minute. This is another reason Ayaka's great. Ayaka's the lifeguard. I got you covered. Ayaka the lifeguard coming through. Come on. Yes. That's another reason to pull for Ayaka. She's a great lifeguard. She's a great lifeguard. I ran out of stamina. Did you drown? Oh.
Easy feat to be a criminal, but it's even harder to run a criminal organization. You and I have heard of the mafia, the yakuza, drug cartels, institutions of extreme illegality, operating on core business principles. Some of them have become more profitable than Wall Street. And in this video, we're going to be shining a light on them. What are the 10 richest criminal organizations this world has ever seen? Number 10, the Medellin Cartel. If the Medellin Cartel still existed today, it would definitely be at the top of the list, because at its prime, this drug-dealing organization was easily the most powerful and most coordinated drug cartel in Colombia, and most of the world. It was so notorious that the US considered it a semi-terrorist organization. And for the uninitiated, the Medellin Cartel was founded by none other than Pablo Escobar. The name Pablo immediately evokes tales of unending wealth, and trust me when I say this, there is more truth than fiction in the tales. Escobar created the cartel in his 20s, in the city of Medellin, Colombia. Official records say that the organization generated over $20 billion annually, and most of the wealth was gained from illegal cocaine trade, a sprinkle of trafficking, political violence, and thuggery, and the shipping of criminally exotic materials. I'll leave the last part to your imagination. Now, if you're one of those naysayers who find it hard to believe the Medellin cartel was that rich, I'll let you know that Pablo was not the only official billionaire that operated under the Medellin cartel. Number 9. Camorra. How does an organization that has no central head amass $4.9 billion? That's a question that would most likely be difficult to answer from your couch. For those in the Camorra cartel, it is pretty simple. Legacy, respect, and structure. Founded and currently still existent in Italy, the Camorra cartel was formed in the early 1600s. They started as a loose association of different criminals with nothing to lose, devoted to one simple goal, the accumulation of wealth. By the 1800s, politicians gave this organized association of criminals the needed arsenal to overthrow the existing monarchy. After being part of such a monumental shift in history, the Camorra cartel began to shift its focus from wealth to power. Amassing power is not a problem. When you combine that with illegal operations such as gambling, trafficking, and counterfeiting, the government will come after you. And that is exactly what happened. But by that time, it was already too late. The Camorra cartel had already gone international, and it now holds considerable power in Italy, holding a vice grip on the waste management systems in Naples. Not too bad for a 400-year-old criminal organization. Number 8. Sinaloa Cartel. Drug business is a profitable business. Everyone knows this, even the CIA. After talking about the incredible exploits of the Medellin cartel, we thought it would be fitting to shine a light on the cartel that took its place as the largest cartel in the world, the notorious Sinaloa cartel. Official records say that this criminal organization, and here's why. Firstly, the Sinaloa cartel is currently one of the largest in the world, and it controls 60% of the drug. The first question is, what is the value of the drug market? Well, depending on who you ask, it is anywhere between $6.5 billion and $500 billion. The range is so wide that no one knows for sure how much is being made. I was enough to have a separate video, and if you've been a fan of The Fugitive, you'll know I have done several videos on the man. He's been able to control the cartel from jail and on the run. Even if you hate what he has built, you have to respect his leadership qualities. Number 7. Ndrangheta. There is no doubt that Italy is in a long-term relationship with organized crime, and it's not just a Hollywood thing. You might not have heard of them as Ndrangheta, but they are one of the most vital members of the global network of the Italian mafia. And how much do they make? On paper, $4.5 billion. But once again, I think that's probably conservative, and I'll tell you why. The Ndrangheta is an Italian mob that was established in the 19th century in Calabria. Their major element of trade was and still is cocaine, and over the years they have become one of Europe's most dominant cocaine traffickers. However, it doesn't end there. What makes this organization extra special is the fact that they have managed to maintain good relationships with other criminal organizations. Often, they will choose compromise before taking the route of violence. This has made them allies rather than enemies, as well as incredibly tough cases to crack for law enforcement agencies. In recent times, the 200-year-old criminal organization has entered into money laundering, investing money into legal businesses to wash their endless funds. If you have a startup idea, and you don't mind the source of their wealth, then you could give them a call. Number 6. Yamaguchi Gumi. You might not have heard of the Yamaguchi Gumi, but you have definitely heard of the Yakuza. They are Japan's equivalent of the Italian mafia. And just as Camorra is part of the Italian mafia, Yamaguchi-gumi is part of the Japanese Yakuza. So, let's dive into this. Anyone that knows the Yakuza in Japan knows that they are one of the most principled criminal organizations in the world. They are so strict that if you break one of their rules or laws, you're expected to undergo an atonement ritual called the yuritsume, which practically means you have to cover with your finger to prove how sorry you are. The largest syndicate under the Yakuza umbrella is the Yamaguchi-gumi, and it was founded in 1916 by Harukichi Yamaguchi. Today, they have at least 20,400 active members and 18,600 associated members. Most of their money comes from extortion, gambling, the sex industry, arms and drug trafficking, stock market manipulation, and internet pornography. It is said that the syndicate generates at least $6.6 billion yearly. Of course, I think it is definitely way more than that. Number 5. Solntsevskaya Bratva. You shouldn't be surprised that Russia has its own mafia. The Solntsevskaya Bratva is the largest and most powerful mafia in Russia and brings in an estimated annual income of $8.5 billion. From contract killing to money laundering to drug dealing, there's hardly anything that this Russian mafia subsidiary doesn't do. You wouldn't be wrong to say that they have their hands in every pie. Unlike the Yakuza, which is highly centralized with a clear chain of command, this organization has something uniquely different. The group has 9,000 members that are divided into 10 separate, almost independent brigades that operate more or less on their own. However, when they have to work together, they pool their resources and do exactly that. Their money is overseen by a 12-person council that meets regularly in different parts of the world, often disguising their meetings as festive occasions. And you thought fiction was stranger than reality. Number 4. D Company. How many people talk about India when they bring up a list of organized crime? It's because most people don't bother to look. Either way, it pays Dawood Ibrahim if D Company stays under the radar because he and it served to ship around heroin and opium, but with time it expanded to supporting and funding Al-Qaeda. The criminal organization makes at least $6.7 billion yearly, and this amount is hearsay because Dawood has been pretty good at covering his tracks. Good enough that since he masterminded the 1993 Mumbai bomb blast, neither Interpol, the CIA, nor the FBI have been able to find him. He is still controlling his criminal empire from the shadows. Number 3. La Cosa Nostra. Can you hear the soundtrack of The Godfather in the background?
10 seconds before insertion.
I can. When it comes to criminal organizations, there is hardly any that is as popular and admired as Cosa Nostra, often referred to simply as the Mafia. The group had its humble origins in the 1800s in Sicily, Italy. Legend has it that it started as a prison gang that had a semblance of the same structure and values that the modern-day Mafia still has. Over the years, Cosa Nostra moved from prisons and villages to more influential places of power, thanks in part to the political instability of the times. They worked hand-in-hand with opposing government factions to carry out assassinations and other forms of sabotage. Then, the mad tyrant Mussolini came into power and proved too violent for even the Mafia bosses, so they fled to the US and Canada to continue their operations. Extortion, gambling, prostitution, money laundering, the list is endless. Cosa Nostra has a global membership strength of at least 25,000 members and 250,000 affiliates, all raking in a cumulative amount of around $50 billion. Number 2. Gulf Cartel. As one of the oldest criminal organizations in Mexico, the Gulf Cartel deserves its place on this list. With their base firmly entrenched in Mexico, the group traffics drugs throughout the United States and even into Europe. Aside from drugs, they are particularly known for their high-profile kidnappings and extreme violence. They also seem to have a finger in almost every pie, dabbling in everything and anything criminal that they can lay their hand on. Out of all the cartels, including the Sinaloa, they have suffered the most at the hands of anti-drug agencies, and yet they have survived. Today, they are still worth around $9.9 billion, remaining one of the richest criminal syndicates operating primarily from Mexico. Number 1. The Triads. The Triads are the most established, most terrifying criminal organization to exist in a long time. They operate in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, but they have expanded to South Africa, the US, Britain, South America, and Russia. Their major trade is human trafficking, and they move at least 100,000 people around the world, varieties of crime that suit their fancy. They are mostly decentralized, and this is why it has been so difficult to dissolve them. A low-level member of the Triad could easily be mistaken for a boss. They allowed a lot of autonomy, and no one knows for sure how their money moves. We just know that they have a load of it.
to say the very least. But some games, after some time, aren't just well within reach. It doesn't make sense not to own them. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 10 new games that are now dirt cheap. So just a quick disclaimer, obviously these aren't games that came out 5 days ago. These are all games that have come out within the last year or so, and there's a good chance that people who do think about the prices of video games haven't gotten all of them. In my opinion, that makes this a bit of a useful list, and if any of you lovely folks have not played these games yet, now's the time. Starting off with a heavy hitter, Resident Evil Village is probably one of the biggest games from the last year and change. And while the prices aren't like stop everything, run up and buy it good, they're actually very good prices still. For the most part, prices for this game are half what they were when the game first came out. $29.99 seems to be the new baseline for the PS4 version, at a lot of retailers like Walmart, GameStop, Target, even Amazon. And interestingly enough, that's the best place to also get the next gen version of the game, because if you hit Amazon, it's still $29.99 for PS5 or Xbox Series X copy. Now, if you really want to save some money, GameFly is the way to go. If you don't mind getting a used copy of it, you can get the PS4 copy for $19.99. At least at the moment, Sony's offering a free upgrade from the PS4 to the PS5 version as well. So you could go ahead and buy that and get the next gen version for $20. Keep in mind, this was $59.99. It's a pretty good deal. And number 14 is Hitman 3, which came out January 20th, 2021. Obviously, this was one that got some seriously glowing reviews. It was the final game in the World of Assassins trilogy, and it's genuinely about as $20 or even less for the previous generation consoles and $29 the previous generation version. Hitman 3, again, one of those free upgrade games, and there's just not a good reason to buy a more expensive disc unless you really have to have a box. A game of this quality, $20 is it. That's a used copy, especially from GameStop, you know. And number 12 is the Mass Effect Legendaries that everyone cares about, that came out back on May 14th, 2021, and at least for a while stayed pretty steady on the price for people who maybe played the original trilogy to death. But if you don't mind going digital, you can get it on Xbox for $23.99. Copies of the game that I've seen is going for $24.99 if you want a new copy and $22.99 for a used one. Either way, the Legendary Edition is a pretty solid collection. It makes some smart improvements on the Mass Effect games, and being able to play them all in one complete package is, in my opinion, worth the price of admission with all of the improvements. I've enjoyed it anyhow. And number 11 is Lost Judgment, another game that is less than it's 100% worth a playthrough. I love both the original Judgment and the sequel. But the first Judgment was actually met with some mix. This one, not so much. People really received this one well, and it's a lot of people's favorite Yakuza game. It definitely stands among my favorites, toe-to-toe with some of the best entries of the rest of the series for sure. It's a massive game as well, so while the markdown here isn't a crazy drop, it's a really good price for this game. Amazon has the PS5 and Series X version selling for $29.99, and the PS4 version is selling at about $27.90. Like Hitman 3 and Resident Evil Village, Lost Judgment can be upgraded from the PS4 version to PS5 for free. So if you want to save a few bucks, there's very little downside to just buying the PS4 version instead of PS5. And number 10 is Ghostwire Tokyo, probably the most recent game on this list. Came out March 25th this year. It feels like it just came out. In fact, that's less than half a year ago. And it's already half off for most major retailers, because, I don't know, it kind of feels like it got forgotten pretty quickly, despite it being a really interesting, just not like the most expensive game out there. You can get away with it. It's actually also came out. Looking back, maybe some of the praise is a little overblown, but it's still a really good at the price they're selling it at. It's definitely worth it for people who are even, if you want a deep discount, GameFly is great. You can get it for $14.99 for the PS5 version. No reason not to give this game a shot. Like I said, it's a quality game. And number 7 is Scarlet Nexus. JRPGs seem to be getting a bit of a revival lately, and Scarlet Nexus you get it enough, and the gameplay is super fun, the characters are endearing, etc., etc. It came out back in June 2021, so it's a little more than a year old, and the prices reflect that. Depending on the retailer, the base price is around $29.99, half of what it was originally, and in a lot of places, it's cheaper than that. Like the PS4 version on Amazon's $21.77, PS5 version is somehow cheaper at $21.10, and the Walmart prices are similarly low. With 2 separate story campaigns, there's a lot of game here, and at those prices, it's very worth diving into if you're into this type of game. And number 6 is It Takes Two, the winner of multiple Game of the Year awards. It Takes Two is a co-op only game that's definitely worth experiencing at least once. It's really entertaining. Like, it innovates and really handles co-op in an expansive way. It was always cheap.